Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses here today to talk about this very important topic. You know, since signing of the 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty, the Philippines has been one of our key allies in the Pacific. However, in recent years, the alliance has grown both more important and even more key as far as our strategic alignment. Despite being outmatched militarily and economically, the Philippines have demonstrated an incredible resolve in resisting Beijing's unlawful aggression in the South China Sea, certainly more recently. But the most important is what the alliance provides us militarily. And Mr. Shriver, you were talking about the expansion of the EDCA bases and the 9 strategic sites that they've given us access to enhance our ability to deter Communist China in the Taiwan Strait, the South China Sea, and other key theaters. It's also allowed us to deploy the Typhoon missile system, which can hold land-based targets and China at risk, as well as surface ships.
I would put the Philippines right at the top of where we need to invest, given its geography and given a window of opportunity. Marcos has been a sea change and really more of a return to the norm, but a sea change nonetheless. And I think we should take advantage of that. And frankly, the population, given Chinese aggression and coercion, is also very much in support of strengthening U.S.-Philippine ties. And I think it's the time to make the investments that are needed.
Great.
Of course, first and foremost, responsible for their own defense, and I think they have done a very admirable job on these resupply missions to Second Thomas Shoal, really resisting that Chinese pressure and coercion. So, a comprehensive approach that is led by the U.S. but joined with allies and partners will, I think, demonstrate to the Chinese that they've got a broader problem, that the country that signed UNCLOS and ratified it but does not honor it and acts outside it is going to face broad pushback. And then on point in the Philippines, I do think we need to resume our cooperation with the Philippine Coast Guard, which is now on pause because it's a state INL program and it's a law enforcement program. The Coast Guard is really on the front lines. So we are no longer the sole provider or only provider of military equipment and other training and other types of services. Japan is a very professional military, and they're lending that expertise to the Philippines in very helpful ways.
Is it fair for us to ask the Philippines to get to 2% of GDP spending on their own defense? I mean, they are trying to modernize here.
I'm for being aspirational, and I think given the threat they're facing, it's reasonable to ask. I think those discussions, that's why we need skilled diplomats, that's why we need capable alliance managers with years of experience. I agree there are some approaches, as Dr. Mastro pointed out, that can have negative effects, and so I think we need to do it with a degree of deftness, but it is important.
In a move to strengthen deterrence against Chinese threats, U.S. will deploy advanced military capabilities to the Philippines, including the Navy Marine Expeditionary Ship Interdiction System, or Nemesis. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth in the Philippines and commitment to the region under Trump.
The United States will deploy additional advanced capabilities to the Philippines. This includes using the Nemesis anti-ship missile system and highly capable unmanned surface vehicles in Exercise Alikatan this April. These systems will enable U.S. forces and the armed forces of the Philippines to train together on using advanced capabilities to defend the Philippines' sovereignty.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says on Friday, March 28, that deterrence is crucial in the Philippines and the region, quote, considering the threats from the Communist Chinese. Hegseth says, quote, peace through strength is a very real thing, during a courtesy call with President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. at Malacanang, his first visit to the Philippines as defense chief.
Friends need to stand shoulder to shoulder to deter conflict, to ensure that there's free navigation, whether you call it the South China Sea or the West Philippine Sea.
Hegseth also mentions a phone conversation with Trump, saying the U.S. president, quote, thinks very fondly of this great country, is very committed to the alliance. He adds,
he and I both want to express the ironclad commitment we have to the partnership, economically, militarily.
In welcoming the defense chief, Marcos notes, quote, how complicated geopolitics has become. Marcos adds that Manila being Hegseth's first stop in Asia is a strong sign of both countries' commitment to work together for peace in the Indo-Pacific region.
The potential for outright conflict is much higher now than it was before. And we worry in the Philippines because it could come from not a strategic decision by anyone saying, okay, we're going to war, but just by making some serviceman making a mistake or some action that's misunderstood. And that's why the ongoing attempt is always to try and lower the temperature, ease up on the rhetoric, and communicate, and just continue to communicate.
That's why you need the phone, the same phone that Khrushchev and Kennedy had, right?
That's right. Yes. That is what I proposed, a kind of hotline between us, so that if there is a message that needed to be sent from one president to another, we can be assured that that message will reach them.
How confident are you the U.S. is willing to go to war with China over a disputed reef in the South China Sea?
Oh, God. To take that a step back from that question is that is precisely what we want to avoid. We want to do everything we possibly can, together with our partners and allies, to avoid that situation whatsoever. This is not the poking the bear, as it were. We are trying to do quite the opposite. We are trying to keep things at a manageable level, to continue the dialogues, whatever they are, at every level.
So we will ensure the freedom of navigation returns to that part of the world, just as pertinent to our conversation today, freedom of navigation is something the Philippines experiences in the South China Sea or the West Philippine Sea. It's something we take very seriously.
We will now have our question and answer portion.
There's a long line of countries in the past who have attempted to test U.S. resolve. We are resolved at this time, at this moment, to work with our partners to reestablish the warrior ethos, to rebuild our military and reestablish deterrence, and come alongside our allies and partners, first and foremost, in this region.
Shortly after Hegseth's announcement, US, Japan and the Philippines staged joint naval drills to boost crisis readiness of a disputed South China Sea shoal. This even as the Chinese military ship kept watch from a distance. The Chinese frigate attempted to get closer to the waters where the warships, aircraft and speedboats from the three allied countries were undertaking maneuvers off the Scarborough Shoal in an unsettling moment. But it was warned by a Philippine frigate by radio and kept away. China is breathing fire with the latest naval drills. Beijing has issued a strong warning to US and Philippines. China says the Philippines should not start a conflict in the South China Sea with US support. It has warned that outside forces should not meddle in the South China Sea. China has called for direct negotiations to resolve the dispute.
Any cooperation between the United States and the Philippines should not be directed against a third party or harm the interests of a third party. The U.S. side should abandon its Cold War mentality, stop instigating ideological confrontation, stop provoking trouble in the South China Sea and sowing discord in the region, and refrain from being an instigator in the South China Sea. We also advise the Philippine side not to make trouble in the South China Sea in accordance with the United States and not attempt to stir up military confrontation.
The Philippines and China are locked in a long-running territorial dispute in the South China Sea. Beijing claims sovereignty over upwards of 90% of the strategic waterway and has accused Manila of acting as a pawn in U.S. efforts to contain China.